Welcome to Backyard Oasis, a podcast designed by and for older adults living in the beautiful Pioneer Valley of Western Massachusetts and produced in the tech studios at Greenfield Community College in Greenfield, Massachusetts.
Hi, I'm Henry Balzarini, and this is Backyard Oasis. Our guest is Jan Maher. Jan is a writer and the co-founder of Lava, a community arts center in Greenfield, Massachusetts. And Jan is the author of 2 novels, a collection of short stories, and several plays, including Ismini, produced last year at Lava, and her new play, Phoenix. Let's meet Jan and hear her thoughts about her work and the creative process. Hi, Jan.
Hi, Henry.
So glad that you agreed to do this with me.
Well, I'm happy to be here.
Yes. I'll ask you this question. Can you think of an event or a moment in time in your past that convinced you that you were an artist or a creator?
That convinced me.
Or that gave you a little hint?
In terms of performing, I think it would probably be my 9th grade year in the drama club. And I really threw myself into the role of Miss Prabs, the lunchroom superintendent. I stomped around the stage and clapped my hands imperiously at the students, who were, of course, all my peers. And the drama coach was a very demanding and exacting person who was great to work with. And there was a particular rehearsal at which I had been spot on and other people had been kind of goofing around. And she sort of called me out to say, this is the way you approach this work, And that was very gratifying.
So that made you think...
That made me think
you're doing something.
I'm doing this the right way.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Where are you originally from?
I'm originally from Indiana. I was born in Huntington. I grew up in Fort Wayne. I left from LaPorte.
Okay, so you did the little Indiana route before you...
The little northern Indiana route.
Uh-huh,
yeah.
uh-huh. And how eventually did you end up here in the western part of Massachusetts?
Well, that's a pretty long story because I've turned 80 recently, so it's been a long trek. I left Indiana to go to college in Illinois, and from that tiny college I moved to Chicago. From there I moved to New York City. Then my first husband and I moved to Pennsylvania, and then we spent some time in France and back and forth and here and there, a little bit in Vermont, and then away, long trek out to Seattle, where I lived for decades, and met my second husband, my current husband. And we went from there to upstate New York, where he taught at SUNY Plattsburgh when he was vested and we were ready to fully, retire. We looked around for where we wanted to go, and Seattle. We were priced out of Seattle by that point. We still owned a house, but we couldn't afford it. And so by this time our daughter had moved to Vermont, and we had another son who had moved east and was living in Vermont. And so we started looking around this area, the New England area in general. And we stayed at a lot of towns overnight. And at some point, our son-in-law, who is coincidentally an architect, said, Greenfield's kind of an interesting town. And Greenfield, okay, we'll go to Greenfield. We stayed in an Airbnb here, a block away from where we now live. And it just felt like, this is it. This is the old shoe we've been looking for, at the bottom of the closet.
Around when was this? Around what year?
About 10 years ago.
Okay.
So, so we started looking here for existing houses that we might find appropriate to move into for retirement. In those days, nothing on the market had a second bathroom or a first floor bathroom, and we were looking at aging in place, the next move we made. So at a certain point, we decided to cash in our Seattle chips and and put all that money into having our son-in-law design us a house.
Oh, nice.
So we live in a 10-year-old house.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, with us in mind when he did the plans.
That's kind of perfect, huh?
Yeah, pretty perfect.
Yeah. Very nice. So you, so lava happened around then?
Lava happened a little later than then. We had founded this nonprofit in Washington State in Seattle in 1991 and had always just kept it going kind of on life support in the years that we weren't living in Seattle. We did occasional, projects here and there that were very small. But we kind of figured we'd keep it for retirement just to see what developed. And what developed was my running into Lucinda Kidder in 2019 at a downtown confab of the creative economy in Greenfield. And she told me that she was just retiring from Silverthorne, famous last words. And she wanted to start a new community arts center. And she had found the space, and she'd found Vanessa Query to work with. And now she just needed to start a nonprofit. And I said, say no more, quoted all my Monty Python lines.
That plan, yeah.
And here we have in our back pocket this nonprofit. So we registered in the state of Massachusetts and started the Lava Center.
So all the pieces fit together.
Yeah, and almost immediately COVID hit, literally within 5 weeks, and we were forbidden to have programs for the public. So we moved online and developed online programming. And Lucinda was sort of called back to Silverthorne to see them through the COVID crisis. And sadly, by the time that had wound down, she had been diagnosed with a terminal cancer. And so she never quite got to be part of Lava in the way that she had planned. But she was around for as much as she could be.
She saw the beginnings.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lava stands for?
Local Access to Valley Arts.
Okay. And I've read on your website that it's an art incubator.
Right.
I love the term. Tell me more about that.
Bring your little fuzzy eggs of possibility, and they get warmed up in lava and hatch into chicks. And
little chickens walking around lava.
Little chickens walking around, growing up, laying some eggs themselves. It's the idea is that people have creative ideas all the time, but they need some place to go where they're supported, And some people are kind of working pretty independently a lot of that time, and then they have something that's finished, but they need an audience for it or they need feedback. Other people have not dared try anything. They've tipped their toes into the water and said, I don't know if I can do this. And so they need the impetus of an event that invites them in at the novice level to just jump in and enjoy things.
So all levels, people of all levels.
All levels. And our community art show is a good example of that when we have 30 or 40 artists whose work is on the wall. And some of it is very polished and comes from artists who make money being an artist. And some of it comes from people who have never before created a piece of art or dared to put what they do into an art show, and from students to people in their 80s and 90s.
It's amazing, and it's all types of art.
All types of art,
not just visual.
All types of art except three-dimensional, because we just don't have the insurance or the space to have sculpture or things that can be bumped into and damaged. It has to be able to hang on a wall.
Okay.
So be essentially two-dimensional or at least, hangable on the wall.
Okay. And it's right in downtown Greenfield.
Right in downtown, right at the crossroads of Federal and Main.
The whole idea of this art incubator or community art thing, I find wonderful because I was a part of it for a little while doing my improv classes and also some of the other stuff, some of the other things, plays and things like that. And you guys are very supportive and open to anyone, which is, to me, is a wonderful thing. And does that happen a lot in the country that you know of?
I don't know, but I know that the opposite has happened enough to me that it's not what I want.
Right.
I've been a theater person trying to kind of get in to be part of a theater project or a theater company and experience the sort of cliquism, we are the insiders, we're the ones who know, and you're the commoners, and no, we're not interested in you, that kind of energy. Not my bailiwick.
No, people need a place where they can try out things.
And people need to be humble about the fact that they aren't the only appointed artists on the face of the earth, and they can learn a whole lot from other people who are coming from different places. So
it's a good thing. So let's talk about creativity. You have a PhD in interdisciplinary studies, and what are those studies?
Well, the fields that I was weaving together are theater education and neuroscience.
Neuroscience. Okay, perfect. Because
I thought so.
Yeah. Let's talk about how someone is creative. You gave me some in the pre-interview questionnaire I sent you. You gave me a lot of good stuff. You gave me some fruitful quotes, like creativity is like gardening or parenthood. What did you mean by that?
Well, it's like I guess in both cases, gardening and parenthood, you have the impulse or the germ of an idea or whatever, the beginning of something, and you tend to it, you grow it, whether it's a pregnancy or a garden patch.
Yeah.
But you're not really controlling it. You're watching to see how it grows. And if you're smart about it, I think you kind of let it show you what it is and then go along with that. You don't impose. So I'm not the kind of gardener that lines beds with bricks and says you cannot go here and you cannot go there.
Right, this is the spot you'll always be in, and this is your neighbor.
Right. And I wasn't the kind of parent that said that to my kids either.
Okay. Yeah.
So for me, it's a very similar process. It's sort of engage with curiosity with the world that you're in and see where it goes.
And then flow.
And then go with the flow.
Yeah. So you also said that you can be creative in little ways and big ways. It'll find a way to assert itself, which I guess is part of what you said. And can you talk more about that? The process itself. For instance, creativity in everyday life.
Well, I think of it most easily when I think about watching a child, a grandchild, or when I was teaching a student. This is a story that kind of just came to me yesterday via Andy Rothschild, who is a wonderful assemblage artist and did a project at the center school, I think it was, where the idea is that you give kids a lot of stuff, just stuff, all kinds of stuff, and then you stand back and let them investigate and play with it. And they start to do that. They start to put it together in patterns that are interesting to them. They start to investigate, does this balance on that? They start to rearrange it. They look around to see which pieces they want to gather to them to try something. There's no rule book. They're not following a diagram. They're not putting IKEA furniture together. They're making something entirely new out of their own impulses in the moment.
They're being kids, and kids are much more fluid with their creative nature.
They are, and working with adults is often a case of just trying to get them to remember being kids again.
Yeah. I've experienced blockages in my creative life. Have you? And what do you do about that?
The blockages in my creative life have come more from my, I think from my tendency to take on other kinds of responsibilities and then get myself overwhelmed with them so that they grab all my time. And then I don't have time for the creative stuff. And eventually that builds a certain pressure in me, and I need to kind of, take a step back and say, no, I need some space for myself. I've never had too much problem with blockage in terms of my writing, in part because I never just start one project and finish it and then start the next one. If I get blocked, I just start something new or go back to another old piece that I, haven't looked at for a while and kind of do something like that. Or construct kind of prompts from, I love to write in public places, as long as I'm not so well known that I can't write because people keep stopping by to say hello.
Right.
But if there's nothing better for me than a really good coffee house in a town I don't live in.
Ah, okay.
And a kind of a booth in the back or a table in the middle, whatever, but where I can just kind of open my journal up and start to write. And if I get a little bit stuck, I just stop and I listen and I eavesdrop. And some phrase wafts to my ear and I jot it down and I go with it. And I would credit Irene Fornes, who is a playwright who won Obies and other awards for her work with that approach, because I did a lot of workshops with her. She used to come out to Seattle and teach like 2-week intensives, and she was just marvelous in terms of, teaching us to create the conditions for ourselves where we could let things surprise us and come in and influence us. So one summer when I was in Seattle during the summer before my husband Doug had joined for the summer, we were living in upstate New York, but going back there for the summers. I had about 3 weeks where I just had writing time, and I just would go to a coffee house and I would open the book of my journal, and then I would lift my eyes and look at something, and whatever struck my eye, then I would write a story about that.
So do you do a lot of free writing in that process, or do you just like get right into it? These things you see in the coffee house, you find something to write it down, and does that start a flow of something?
I think my process is that it starts a flow of guiding questions, right? So I'm thinking of one particular story that started by looking at a sign that just said "Help Wanted" in a pizza place that was across the street. So it was like, okay, help wanted. So I free associated on that for a while, and then I, thought about, well, who would be looking for the job? And I don't know, I can't even remember now, but I create those questions for myself, and then I investigate what the possible answers are. And some of them feel right, and some of them just don't stick.
So being observant is a key thing.
Being observant and being curious.
And curious.
It's like what, and that's what my weird doctorate was all about, was being really curious about how do we change and transform on the molecular level, in the classroom. How do we, teaching is transforming, right, is leading people to new places. And theater is entirely about that. If you go to a show and nothing transforms in it, it's a pretty deadly boring show. Mm-hmm. So that was, it's about that transformation process.
Yeah.
And what drives it, and how you can create the conditions for yourself to be swimming in that territory, in that medium.
Is everybody creative?
I think so, but they don't always trust it or know it.
Yeah. And in a way, that's a life block for some people,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. I mean, there are whole societies or cultures, of course, that are determined to not have people be creative. I'm thinking North Korea, for example. But the human impulse is creativity. And so there are still people who, as indoctrinated as they were, they get a whiff of making their own choices about something and find a way out.
I know when I'm creative, I'm happier.
Yes.
And I know that a lot of people are really stuck to the pattern or whatever they're used to doing. And creativity sort of loses its touch or loses its part that's already in them, as you said. You mentioned, well, we talked about children being creative, but can you be creative as an adult?
I sure hope so.
Yeah, I mean, why do people lose their child? I mean, you don't want to be a child, but be childlike.
Yeah. Well, I think there are circumstances that life imposes on us that can make it pretty difficult to remember that joy and creativity. And I've had spates in my life, fortunately, some long time ago, that were like that. You can end up with a partner that isn't supportive of it, and that can be difficult. You can end up in a society that is moving towards authoritarianism, and that can make it more difficult because you're a little different, you're doing something differently, and you're living in a time and space where regimentation is somehow coming to the fore as a value. So it's not always easy. But I think even within those circumstances, people can find their little ways, you know.
Right, you can be creative just in, well, how you make a meal.
You can put the fork on the wrong side, quote unquote, of the plate and just look at how that looks and, you know, think about why is that the wrong side? And, you know.
You're rearranging things that are not. My friends are always laughing at me because I always move my kitchen table just a little bit. Mm-hmm. Every time they come, it's in a different place. I mean, not different part of the room.
Right.
I just make it sideways instead of straight up and down. Mm-hmm. So I guess if you see something around you and you change it, you're thinking differently, and that opens your creativity, you think?
I think so, yeah.
You said something about imaginary playmates. Who were your imaginary? Well, what about your imaginary playmates?
Well, my imaginary, I had 4. They were Big Bean, who was shaped like a very large lima bean, Little Bean, her daughter, who was shaped like a baby lima bean, Dr. Hinkle, don't ask me, I think maybe Dr. Doolittle had something to do with that idea.
When was this, by the way? Is this
when I was like...
last week? No. When you were a child?
When I was a child.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And Solid was... I know where Solid's name came from. I had this really grubby rubber baby doll that... to an adult was not an attractive toy, I guess. Mm-hmm. I must have played with her in the mud or something. And I gave it to my great aunt one day to admire, and she was trying to think of something kind to say about this ratty doll, and she said, "My, what solid legs it has." And so,
hence the name.
The doll became Solid, and then that became my 4th imaginary playmate, who was best friends with Little Bean. And Big Bean was sort of a soap opera. Dr. Hinkle and Big Bean were kind of courting, you know. Mm-hmm. And Solid was sort of like, I don't know, a Heidi figure or something, kind of like not the biological child of Dr. Hinkle, but had been adopted by him. So it was this sort of created family unit of 4 folks who got along well, and
these are characters.
Yeah.
And you're creating characters. Yeah. You've written 2. Have you just recently started writing plays, or were you always written plays?
No, I started writing plays a very long time ago when, I don't know, the first play that I had that was produced that was not a play for children excuse me, was 1974, I think.
Okay.
So that's been a while. Mm. That's like half a century or more, right?
I know, they go by fast.
Yeah, they do. So yeah, I have not been exclusively a playwright. I wrote plays And I also did a lot of theater work that was like developing the script out of the work that the actors did in improvisation, but shaping it. I did that kind of theater work for a while. And then during the years that I was a single parent, I wrote a lot of short poetry, whatever I had
Whatever
time.
you had the time for it, right?
And then at a certain point, I was working on something that I thought was a play, and it kept not being a play, and I discovered that it was a novel, which was very daunting because I had not written, and you're responsible for different things as a novelist. With a play, you've got to write the things that people say to each other and the actions that they do with and to each other and their environment in a fixed amount of time. And the story has to be told entirely in that slice of time. And it's the actor's job to figure out how does what they had for breakfast influence their mood in this scene. It's not something that the writer of the play has to think about. With a novel, it's suddenly you're responsible for the entire life arc of your characters.
You're describing it all.
You just can't throw them into 2 hours and say, okay, good luck.
You do what you will, right? Right.
Or maybe some people can, and I can't. So when I had that realization, I went into like years of research on the questions, the guiding questions I was asking myself, and it took me many, many, many years to crank out that first novel, and still working on cranking out the next one.
So your new play is called Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give a little description or tell me more about that?
The basic setup is that there are siblings in their 50s, Alan and Jess, and they are sorting through a box of photographs after their mother's funeral. So they're at the apartment that she's lived in, closing it down, and, furniture obviously is easy to get rid of, but here's this box of old photos. So they're sorting through that, and as they sort through them, we kind of learn a little bit about who they are, who the parents were, why they haven't seen each other for a while, the tensions around the dysfunctions of the family. And then one photograph in particular sparks some memories that bring them to very different places. Alan has wonderful memories of this person whose photograph they found. Jess has a whole different set of memories, and so the play is about those memories coming to the surface, and then what it kind of propels them to find out about themselves and each other. And then another photograph that poses for them another kind of mind-boggling question, and their response to that as characters, and then how they kind of resolve that tension with something that brings them together in a sort of a celebratory rebirth moment, which is why the title Phoenix.
Oh,
there's
Phoenix.
fire imagery in the play, so rising from those ashes
Yes.
of those fires and those memories.
Has it been performed yet?
Not yet.
Where is it? What is
Very
it?
first reading it will ever have had will be next Friday,
Which is
which is the 5th
June
of June.
5th. Okay.
Yeah.
So this will air after that, but
Okay.
what are your plans for it? Do you plan to produce it at Lava or?
Well, the first thing is to have this reading on
Yes.
the 5th because there's an old saw in theater that plays are not written but rewritten. And so this is the very first
Production.
version that has seen or that will see the light of day. And it's done, this is Lava's annual on the Boards Festival where new plays are read or I've had plays in this festival before that have been older plays that I reworked, that I updated. But this is the first one that's just first time anybody's ever seen these words. The director, well, the producers who chose it, but the director and the actors and me and then the audience, whoever comes. And then based on the feedback and the way that goes, it goes to its next step. So I don't know what that is yet.
Well, hey, go for it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you for talking with me about creativity and about your creativity, which is, and do you have like one last thing to say for our listeners, our older adults? Would you have one thing to say about creativity for older adults?
Yes, do it.
Do it.
Do it. If there's something that you've always been curious about, go find out. If there's something that you put aside to be practical 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, pick it up again. If there's something that you've never done, challenge yourself to try it.
And don't be afraid of your own creativity.
Don't be afraid of your own creativity. Start by moving your fork and spoon around and see where it leads you.
Move your table.
Right, or your table, right.
Thank you, Jan.
Thank you.
And thanks for spending time with us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. You can follow us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, or somewhere else, and you share it with a link. And until next time, I'm Henry Balzarini, and thank you for listening.
This concludes today's podcast. We're always looking for new ideas, so feel free to reach out to Judy Raper, Associate Dean of Community Engagement at Greenfield Community College, at 413-775-1819 if you have an idea you'd love to share. Special thanks to the creators of Backyard Oasis, Denise Schwartz, Chad Fuller, Dennis Lee, and Christine Copeland. Have a great day.